Thank you. Thank you so much. I have in my trusty iPhone a couple of notes here. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the mayor. My best friend growing up is Chris Bevilacqua in Massapequa. It's all Jews and Italians. The nickname for Massapequa is Mazza Pizza. Everybody who lives down on the water are the doctors and lawyers and bankers, AKA the Jews. And everybody who lived on my side of the tracks, the cops, the teachers, the firemen, the iron workers, the hoodlums. No lie, I lived about 5 blocks from Carlo Gambino until he died. And whenever he died when I was about 12 or 13 years old. Listen, Mark, Antonio, you guys are awesome. What you're doing here is just phenomenal. I want to thank you for having me here. And of course, some of the big sponsors, Scotia and Air Canada, my table here, do you know? Thank you so much for keeping to support this great endeavor. Like I told you, I grew up well, let me start first by saying, I've been married for 25 years. My wife, many of you may know, her name is China Phillips. She's in a band called Wilson Phillips, and between my wife's career and my career, this is like a second home to us. Me alone, I've worked from coast to coast. I worked Vancouver, I worked Toronto, I worked Montreal, I worked in New Brunswick. My wife has worked everywhere up here. I mean, she's worked in Regina. I mean, so if she worked in Regina, she's worked everywhere, right? Thank God for those 75,000 casinos that are now in North America. Otherwise, we'd have gone broke by now. You know, when I started in the business in the late 1980s, this region was just starting to get hot, and we used to have to bring many Americans in here with the expertise to help train and support for technical support in Toronto, you know, back in the the mid-late 80s. And then Vancouver popped up, and Vancouver got hot. And then Montreal had its little moment there too, where films started to go to Montreal. And now I'm starting to do, there's a credit up in Sudbury. I've done a couple films up in Sudbury that I've either starred in or, the nickel mining town. By the way, Mayor, I got this problem on the 400 when I'm going from Pearson out to Sudbury. I'll try to keep it under, what is it in kilometers? Is it about 115? What do I got to do to like go over the speed limit but not get a ticket? 120? All right, I may need your help if I'm in your jurisdiction. So, it's funny, Baldwin is English, Irish, German, Scottish, and French between my mother and my father, not a drop of Italian, but all of my best friends in Massapequa, Di Rienzo, Rinaldo, DeSciullo, Canigliaro, Bevilacqua, Di Rienzo, Sicenzia. And my 3 good buddies when I was a kid growing up, one's name was Vito, one's name was Aldo, and one's name, I'm not lying, was Umberto. Umberto DeSciullo. We were good friends until I started dating his cousin. What you guys are doing here is really terrific. It's really important. To have the festival, I live in a town where they have a pretty big festival, kind of like maybe a little bit bigger than Vaughan's, but certainly much smaller than TIFF. It's the Santa Barbara International Film Festival. We get lucky because of our proximity to Los Angeles, so we get to get people that come up to Santa Barbara from Los Angeles to support the festival. It's not as logistically challenging to get the people there because it's a 90-minute drive. But what you're doing here is really, really great. It's really, really important. With all these Italians here, how'd you come up with a name like Vaughan? Is that Italian for something? No. Can we change it to cannoli or, Malagot? Yeah. But I remember very vividly, I finished the movie Backdraft, and I was getting, the day I was cast in Backdraft, it was on a Friday, and on Monday, my agent was a former Broadway singer and dancer very flamboyant guy, and when he had good news for me, I picked up the phone. He would always be singing to me. He would sing to me. He would always sing that song, My Boy Bill, I'll spare you. But he said, I got calls from 9 attorneys and 14 managers. I didn't have an attorney and I didn't have a manager. I just had an agent. And he said, I got calls from 9 attorneys and 14 managers. So clearly, this was being cast in this film by Ron Howard and Brian Grazer with an amazing cast. I've worked with a lot of amazing actors in my career. But it was a real turning point in my career. And I kind of, in Hollywood, from Hollywood's perspective, it kind of put me on the map. And I remember repeatedly being offered and being involved with many, many big films in and around that time. Some of them I got, some of them I didn't get. Big studio films. I remember I was offered the movie Speed like 3 or 4 times. And I had just finished working with Jan de Bont on Flatliners. He was the cinematographer on Flatliners. He was a brilliantly talented cinematographer. I didn't know how he would translate as a director because he couldn't translate wherever he was from. He didn't speak very good English. I was very nervous about working with him when I couldn't even understand what the hell he was saying half the time. So I didn't wind up doing the film, and I kept coming back to this one film that I did called 3 of Hearts, which was, $3.5 million budget that we did, and this was right after I was cast in Backdraft, and I finished Backdraft. It was in the can, and people kept wanting me to do these big studio movies, and none of them spoke to me like the storyline in this character. I played a male escort in this dramedy, and I kept trying to find reasons not to do it, and I couldn't find any reasons to do it. And the very first film I wound up doing, and it was a mistake. I should have jumped into a film 3 or 4 months after Backdraft came out, and I waited for the right opportunity, and finally, after about a year and a half, they pulled 3 of Hearts together, and that was the first film I did after Backdraft. So I went from doing a $50 million movie in Chicago that we shot for 7 months to a $3 million movie that we shot in Los Angeles and New York in 3 weeks or something. And I think it's very, very important to support low-budget films, and I think it's very, very important to support independent films, and I think it's very, very important to support student films. I remember doing a student film for an NYU student who wanted a very interesting short that I did called Ice Water about the black market of organ transplantation. And my character got into debt, and I sold one of my friends down the river for his kidneys. And that was an NYU student short that we did, and I had the best time. I didn't get paid on it. I did it as a favor. I worked on it for like 4 or 5 days on this little student short, and I had a great time. It was one of my favorite projects. And it also introduced me to, because I did it, one of the producers on it was a friend of mine named Will Wallace, who was the stepson of Terrence Malick, and it developed a really important relationship for me with Terrence Malick. So, but throughout my career, I did 3 of Hearts, I did The Squid and the Whale, I did Humble Pie. I've just done a series of little films. I just did a film that we produced, Bruno and I worked on, and we produced in New Orleans called Cut Off. We just did a little independent film in Torino, Italy. We did another little film in North Carolina, sorry, Greenville, South Carolina. And now I'm coming back up again to Sudbury. So I'm glad that we're going to be back up here. I'm not sure exactly when. I'm hoping we can get in September and October and dodge that bullet of being up there on the, on the surface of the moon, as they say up there. But I also did this film, Squid and the Whale, and that was a film, I don't know if any of you have seen it or not, but if you haven't, you should see it. It's a film that I did with Jeff Daniels and Laura Linney and Anna Paquin and Jesse Eisenberg and myself, and we made the whole film for $900,000. We shot it all in New York City in 22 days, and we came out against King Kong, and King Kong was made for $200 million, and we made our film for less than $1 million. And at the end of that year, over 200 critics had put Squid and the Whale on their top 10 list for the top 10 best films of the year. Over 200 critics. Thank you. And King Kong didn't make any, and that was a $200 million film against a $1 million film. So it always speaks to me when I get a chance to work with really talented people on these low-budget films. You don't need a lot. It's a little bit tight right now on some of the budgets they're trying to make movies on now. There's something that happened, and I'll close with this quick story. Over the last 15 years, there's been a great shift in the business that ties into the festival and short films and independent films. The advent of the internet and the collapsing of the economy in 2008, 2009, and the proliferation of pay television changed the business forever. My wife is in the recording business. It's decimated the recording industry, and it's really interesting when you make movies. Studios are dependent on you buying a ticket, and movie executives depend on you tuning in. They sell their advertising dollars based on you watching the screen. So you only make money if you buy the ticket for 10 or 12 bucks, and they only make money if they sell the advertising based on the Nielsen ratings. In cable TV, it's different. They're making money whether you're watching it or not, because you pay your cable bill every month, and they get a fee from you whether you're watching or not. This changed everything, because those guys that ran those networks back in the day, 25, even probably 22, 25 years ago, the HBOs of the world and the Showtimes and the FXs, and now we have Amazon and DirecTV and Netflix making original content. Those guys went to the writers and they said, give me your passion project. Give me the project that you've been dying to make, you've been trying to get made for 5, 6, 7, 10 years, and nobody will make it. He goes, we will make it. They can't make it. They can't afford to take this kind of risk. We can, because you guys are paying your cable bill whether you're watching or not. So they can afford to take risks that nobody else can. And sure enough, you're wondering why all these Academy Award-winning actors are now doing television. All of the writers went into television, and all of the actors, like lemmings, followed the writers because they wanted to follow the good material. And today, because of what's going on in the economy, the best opportunity, look, the face facts, the greatest era in the history of television is right now, for sure. The best television in the history of television has been going on for the last 15, 20 years. The worst television in the history of television has also been going on at the same time. So there's a lot of stuff out there, 600 channels, they have to fill the content. But all the actors started following, and there's this incredible downward compression now in television, and the best opportunity for actors to get a great part and get a payday is in television. And there's this incredible competition in television now. I don't know if you guys know, but 97% of the Screen Actors Guild don't earn a living at acting. 3% of the union earns what constitutes, as defined by the federal government, I think it's $19,000 or $20,000 a year. 3% of the union earn a living. I'm trying not to scare away the actors in the room, the 3 artists that just won those $1,000 checks. Make sure you're a double major. That's all I can tell you. Study finance and study the fine arts. And the reason all of this is important is because one of the things that was a contributing factor was the collapse of the economy, because at that time, all of the Wall Street guys that would pool together their money, put together $30, $40, $50 million to finance a slate of low-budget independent films. Sex, Lies, and Videotape changed everything. And after that, there was this explosive, very vibrant, very healthy independent film market where you can go make a film for $3, $4, $5, $6 million. And if it was a spoken word drama and there wasn't a lot of action and a lot of stunts and all this other stuff, if it was just the actors and the words and the director and the camera, you could make a great movie, and actors can get paid a little bit too. That all went away, and we're very, very slowly licking our wounds and recovering from that. So I really, really think it's absolutely vital for people like Mark and Antonio to support short films, to support low-budget projects, to support the independent industry, because the economy slowly comes back and independent film slowly follows. And I just wanted to commend you all, you two primarily, also the sponsors, the mayor, and all of you here tonight for your leadership and your support in supporting what it is that we do. And my brothers won a couple of Emmys, a couple of Golden Globes, a lot of Screen Actors Guild Awards. I walked into his house one day, he said, here, we went to the awards, he handed it to me, he goes, can you carry this? And I carried it in. I go, where do you want me to put this? He goes, just put it up on the mantle. And I walked around the corner into his living room and I looked at the mantle and there were 7 more of them up there. It's like, you bastard. But he doesn't have one of these. Thank you.